My paranormal experience happened in October of 2004. I had just started a new job working for a college in Tennessee, and my wife had already been working there for a while. And I think it was my first week of work. And it was homecoming for the college. And so there was a lot of stuff to do. I worked helping plan events. And we had a busy weekend. And I think it was Sunday of that weekend. We had a big event that morning, and then about a 3 or 4 hour break in the afternoon, and then another big event coming up that night. And so in between, my wife and I, we were pretty bushed. So we thought, well, let's just go home and take a quick nap, and then we'll feel better for the stuff we have to do that night. So we went home and got in bed and fell asleep pretty easily. Sometime later, I woke up and was laying there, and for a second, I just laying there. I was awake, but I wasn't moving, just kind of, enjoying still laying there. And then I started trying to move, and I couldn't move. And so I thought, well, this is sleep paralysis. This has happened to me a couple times before. You wake up, and at first, it's something to do with your brain making it so you can't hurt yourself in your sleep, is what I understand. And so, you can't move sometimes, but you just push through it. And after a few seconds, it comes back and everything's fine. It's kind of annoying, but that's all there is to it. So that's what I started trying to do, trying to just, strain and push and, make the lockdown go away. But this time it didn't happen. I kept struggling and struggling, and I couldn't. If I pushed as hard as I could open my eyes just barely enough to see the light on the ceiling over our bed. I mean, just could barely see it, like just a tiny slit in my eyelids. After a minute of this, I was getting kind of worried because it should have lifted, and it's a terrible feeling to be just kind of paralyzed like that. And I didn't know what to do. So I kept struggling, and I, kept just pushing with everything I could, and nothing. I just couldn't move any of my limbs, only my eyelids, that tiny little bit. And so after I had pushed as hard as I could for a couple of minutes and nothing happened, I started thinking maybe something else is going on. I had never experienced anything like this before, but I grew up Christian, and my parents were Pentecostal, charismatic Christians. And there's always talk about people having encounters with demons or spiritual darkness. And the thing you were supposed to do is rebuke the devil. And so I couldn't talk because I couldn't move my mouth or my vocal cords, but I thought in my mind, I'm just grasping at straws. I didn't know what else to do. I thought something like, in the name of Jesus, let me go. And as soon as I thought that sentence, it felt like there was fluid in my body, and all the fluid was rushing toward the middle of my chest, like running from like my feet up through my legs, from my hands, through my arms, down into my chest. And it felt like it was coming out of the middle of my chest. And again, I couldn't see any fluid, just what it felt like. As I could feel the fluid come out, I got control of my body back, and I immediately sat straight up in the bed. But as soon as I sat up, all the fluid shot back in. It went in again much quicker than it had come out. Just all the way back in my body. I stiffened up. I fell back down. And again, I couldn't move. The paralysis was back. And so I immediately thought again, like, in the name of Jesus, let me go. And I felt the fluid. It's like it kind of trembled like a bowl of Jello. It kind of shook. I could feel it shaking in my body just real briefly, and then it stopped, and I was still paralyzed. So I thought it again, just getting kind of frantic now, in the name of Jesus, let me go. Nothing. In the name of Jesus, let me go. Just nothing. And now I started to panic because that was the only move in my playbook. I didn't seem like sleep paralysis because just lasting too long. I couldn't fight through it. I tried the only thing I knew for weird paranormal spiritual affliction, and it kind of had worked, and then it didn't. So now I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I'm laying there, and I'm going through my mind everything I can think of from the Bible about demonic stuff. And I may come back to this. I'm not sure that I would say it was a demon today. I've studied a little more about this kind of stuff, but at the time, that's all I could think of that it could be. So I'm going through my mind, thinking back about, what else is there in the Bible about this kind of stuff that might help me. And I remember the story where Jesus has his disciples, his followers, and there's a point where he says, okay, now it's time for you guys to go out and start telling people the good news about me. I think he like has them form pairs and he sends them out into different cities and towns and he gives them authority to do miracles and stuff. And after a while they come back and they're super psyched because they say, I think they say like, Jesus, Jesus, the demons submit to us in your name. And Jesus isn't very impressed. And he says something like, don't rejoice that the demons submit to you in my name. Rejoice instead that your names are written in the Lamb's book of life, which is a really weird thing. Even in the Bible, they only talk about the Lamb's book of life like maybe 2 or 3 times. And it's supposed to be this book in heaven where God writes your name if you belong to Jesus, according to Christianity. But this is the only thing that I could think of in the Bible. And so I can't actually talk because I'm paralyzed. So I think the sentence, my name is written in the Lamb's book of life. As soon as I think that, all the fluid, again, this time even quicker, rushes up to the middle of my chest, comes out. I sit up. I'm like breathing hard and it doesn't come back. So that is basically the end of this encounter. I never experienced anything paranormal before this. I don't think I've experienced anything paranormal after. And part of what's weird about it is it just doesn't connect to anything else. I don't know what this presence was. I don't know what it was after. One of the things that makes me wonder today, after I've been able to think about it for, I guess, 18 years, it seemed like it was an intelligent thing that I was interacting with because it was responding to what I was thinking. But I never felt anything evil. If demons are real and you think they'd be like making you have evil thoughts or you feel like a sinister presence, there's none of that. There was no sense of foreboding. Sometimes people, when they get paralysis in their sleep, they feel like there's a presence in the room with them. I didn't have that. It was just the control over my body and the way it interacted with what I was like mentally saying to it. So I'm not sure how I categorize it today. It seemed to react to what I was thinking, but if you believe in demons, it doesn't seem to check out with the stuff that people say about that. So I'm not really sure what the entity would have been, but I think that's about it. It never came back, never had any more interaction. I've had sleep paralysis a few times again since then, but it was just like the old times. I'd struggle and it would go away. No more of this spiritual warfare type element. And that's all I got.
My paranormal experiences have been a staple in my life. They've happened many different times, many different places, at many different ages, and they continue to this day. Growing up, my parents moved a lot, and we had one time found ourselves living in the great state of New Jersey, where my first paranormal experience came hand in hand, back to back, with me joining the Pennypack Park diving team. There was a swimming pool next to Pennypack Elementary, and I was on the diving team, and I decided I was going to hot dog one day, which being show off, in front of a girl that I kind of liked, which I did like, and decided to dive off the diving board to 8 foot. The problem was I held my hands in the wrong position, causing the water to smack me unconscious, and I drowned. I remember leaving my body. I remember taking that last breath, burning. And I remember looking at the lifeguards playing rock, paper, scissors, trying to figure out who's going to save me. My best friend at the time, Dwayne, he jumped in trying to help me and save me. And when they finally revived me, my first thing out of my mouth wasn't thank you. It was, why was you guys playing rock, paper, scissors to save me? And they looked at each other and turned white. The place we lived at in New Jersey, Willowboro, was a newly developed neighborhood at that time. It was built over marshlands and trash, garbage fill. But if anybody's not familiar, it's the home of the Jersey Devil, and New Jersey is folklore is steeped in witchcraft and Wicca. So my parents was highly church-going folks at the time, and they watched Pat Roberts and all this stuff, and everything was of the devil, and we couldn't watch MTV when Wham was coming out with the new videos and Culture Club. We weren't allowed to watch those type videos. They thought it was, things that the devil had sent to the earth to corrupt our young minds. So leading into my first experience, my very, very first experience, which is still a topic in my family because when the experience happened and the reason why we moved from the house in Pennypack, we had lived on a hill block down the street from the police station and the library, Pilgrim Lane. I don't want to give up the address. But we lived on Pilgrim Lane, and it was the library on one side and the school on the other. And behind the school was woods and bike trails. And growing up, that was my outlet in life, riding bikes, BMX. And we used to ride to 7-Eleven to get BMX Plus, see what Mike Miller and Dennis McCoy was doing on their Hutch Trick Stars. I had a small group of friends, probably about 8 of us, and I'm not going to say we was a gang, but we was just a friendly group of kids that enjoyed horror movies and BMX bike ride. The house that we lived in was an old colonial. I do remember that, and it had a pretty sizey backyard. And my room was pretty big at that time. Didn't have a lot in it, though. It was a very spacious room. My brother had his own room, and I got a sister. She had her own room. It was in the front. My brother's room was in the back between the bathroom. And my mother and father had the master bathroom that was also in the front. My first experience kind of changed my whole thinking about life in general. I was in the 5th grade. I remember I was in the 5th grade, so age-wise, I'd say I was about 11 or 12 maybe. And my brother and I didn't sleep in the same room, but we did a lot of sneaking back and forth, exchanging He-Mans and G.I. Joes so we can lock in for the night. Because my parents were really strict on once you went to bed, you went to bed. You shouldn't be getting up to get no water or anything like that, just to use the bathroom, and that's that. They like the quiet house. So in this night in particular, I remember my mom would tuck my sheets in, kind of like a military fold, so my feet wouldn't stick out. And I had this big thing about sleeping under the sheet. I just was always fearful about having a body part exposed, and I always thought the sheet was going to be some type of magic shield that keep me from the evils. I don't know. It's kind of like Linus, if you could say that. But getting into the story, I was asleep, and it was just about a little bit past 12 the first time. And I'm laying in the bed. I'm dozing off. My room had a bed, a nightstand, and I had a closet where it had almost these plastic bamboo sliding doors on it. And I remember the doors used to always open on their own. And it really freaked me out. I remember tying rubber bands around the handles of the doors so it wouldn't open up, because I always felt like there was something in the closet trying to get out. But this particular night, I heard the doors slide back. Didn't bother getting out of bed. I just heard it. I kind of knew what it was. I was awake, but I wasn't. And then that was the first time I heard the voice. To this day, my family still calls it the voice. My wife laughs at me to this day about it, but it's a thing that happened. And I heard a voice. And all it simply said was, Robert. Just that same volume, same monotone. It sounded like a lady who smoked 75 packs of cigarettes. She said, Robert. And I poked my head up and I'm looking around the room and I'm like, what? And I'm saying to myself, well, I got to be tired because my imagination is seriously talking to me. So I remember I laid back down and it said it again, but not so plain this time. This time it was like, Robert. And now I'm awake. I got up, I go to my brother's room, and I'm wailing on him. He's dead asleep. He's waking up confused. What's up? And I'm like, yo, you stay out of my room. And they're like, what are you talking about, bro? I've been in here asleep. And I'm like, yo, don't come in my room. Don't play with me. I'm not in the mood for it. And I remember my brother looks at me and he's wiping his face and he's like, dude, look at my pillow. Like, it's covered in slobber. I have not went anywhere. I've been asleep. I go back to my room. I lay down. And I say about 20 minutes later, 20, I hear it again. First time, the same way, straight, Robert. And I said, wait a minute, hold up. Now, who is calling me out my name? So at first I thought maybe I got a friend hanging out the window. I go to the window to the side. I look, I'm like there, look in the backyard, nothing. I get back in the bed. I take the rubber band, I close the door to the closet. I close my room door and I proceed to go back to bed. Now these floors in my room I remember they were the black linoleum tiles. So it was really cold when I put my feet down. So I didn't want to be on the floor too long because I didn't have shoes on. I go back in the bed. I jump back in the bed. And 10 minutes pass. And I hear, Robert. So now I'm like, yo, I don't even care who it is. I'm not getting up. The floor is cold. I'm half asleep. There's no way I'm getting out of bed. So I'm still under the blanket. Well, under the sheet, because my blanket was folded at the end of the bed. I'm under the sheet. And I hear it say it longer. And it's like, Robert. And I said, I'm not going to look. I'm saying, in my head, I said my brother had to broke in my room. He had to. There's no other explanation, right? There's no way somebody climbed up my window, took the time, climbed up my window just to call my name. And it said it again, Robert. And I said, nah, I'm going to go ignore it. Now, I'm laying on my stomach and I turn my head toward my left shoulder. I felt 3 cold fingers brush my face. But this time, it said, Robert. And I jumped up. I don't even remember hitting the floor. I jumped up and ran straight to my mom's room. I might have took, and to be honest with you, and I say this to this day, even when I tell the story, and my mother was here one time, we was talking about it, I might have touched the floor 3 times from my room to her room. I mean, I was putting on the jam. I was gone. I flew out the bed, ran to my mother's room, jumped in between her and my dad. I was like, yo, there's somebody in my room. I'm not even playing. Y'all need to go check this out. I'm not going nowhere. And my mother was like, yo, if you don't get out of my bed, I said, I'm not going nowhere. You can beat me. You can put me on punishment. I don't even care. Something touched me in my face in my room with the door closed and the windows locked. So, yeah, you can give me a normal explanation. I will kindly leave this nice warm bed where the safety is at. I'm not going anywhere. My mother, who was peeved, upset, to say the least, goes to my room, checks it out. There's nothing there. Well, This kid didn't even care. I stood in the bed with my mother and my dad until morning time. I never went back to that room. I slept in my sister's room. She had a little futon in her room. That wound up being my bed, and it kind of disturbed my mom so much that we wound up moving to a different section of Willingboro, which is called Garfield East. Conveniently enough, I was going to the school there anyway, because I didn't go to Pennypack. I used to get bused to Garfield East. So now we're living in Garfield East, and we wound up moving to a house at 6th Lane, the only triangle house on that block, with a big fir tree in the front yard and a big wooden gate in the backyard, and maybe about 400 squirrels that lived in those trees in the back of the house. We moved there, and what I loved about that house was the fireplace. The only thing we hated was sometimes you would leave the fireplace sheet open and the squirrels would run in the house. You had to open up the back slide door to let them out. We wound up moving. So I thought that was the end of the haunting, whatever you want to call it, the experience. I thought it was it. And it wasn't. About 2 months passed because it was that summer. So the house had a triangle roof. What I mean by a triangle roof, it was a pointed roof where our room walls were slanted and it looked kind of like a pyramid. It was only a 2-bedroom. The main bedroom was downstairs. Me and my brother and I both shared the hall because it was huge. And my sister had the smaller room on the opposite side of the bathroom. And then my mother and father had the downstairs room. And then there was a den, and there was, 3 bathrooms in the house and everything. It was a pretty nice house. So I'm in the room, minding my business, and out of the blue, I hear the same voice and the same tone, the same volume in the daytime say my name. And when I tell you, I'm a pretty brown-skinned dude, pretty, brown-skinned. I'm not black, I'm brown-skinned. But when I tell you, I was pasty when I heard it. I don't even think I moved for about 5 minutes because it literally sounded like somebody was saying my name over my shoulder. My brother had entered the room, saw my face. Even when I'm telling the story now, tears come down. And it's not from me crying, just automatically. They just start, my eyes get watery. My brother said my tears was coming down my face. I was stuck. I couldn't even explain it. And it was just one of those things where, because my parents were religious, no matter what you told them, it's the devil. There was no, paranoia, energies, apparitions, poltergeists, none of that. It's the devil. Just pray on it. Everything was just pray on it. Mom, we're out of sugar, just pray. Everything was pray. So I was like, I'm not telling my mother. I am not going to bother my father. I'm going to deal with this. Now, growing up with the friends I had, we did not make the best decisions. Growing up, we played this thing where we tried to, reconstruct things like we see on the news. And we was heavy into D&D. For those who don't know what D&D is, Dungeons and Dragons. And none of our parents allowed us to play the actual game. So we used to have to make our own. We would take papers and draw our own mazes and make our own dice, come up with our own rules. And in the midst of us doing that, finding spells, people found spells, and we did a lot of stupid stuff. And the first stupid thing we did was make our own D&D game, which involved the Ouija board. And though I've had my experiences, I was very skeptical about a Ouija board. But that did not stop. What took place took place. My friends and I had decided to gather at my house because we was one of the few homes that had a downstairs den, which was, still part of the house, but it was on the side. And we all came over and we had the candles burning. We had our little LARP scenarios going on where live action role playing, where we were wizards and goblins and all that. And we took out the board, the Ouija board. Now, people don't understand what Ouija boards are. Let me give you a quick tutorial. A Ouija board is a way you can communicate with unseen spirits. A lot of times people think they communicate with their loved ones, but the spirit can be in camouflage or playing a role to get your attention to gain access to not only your thoughts, but to your home. So, us being dumb kids, we didn't realize the repercussions of our actions. We thought it was just a cool tool to use to play our fake Dungeons and Dragons. We were wrong. Absolutely wrong. It was about 5 of my closest friends at the time. And we was in the den. And my boy brought out the Ouija board and we started playing the game. Well, during the game, the slider kept moving with nobody touching it. And when we decided we noticed it, we immediately ended that game. We didn't even see what it spelled. We left the room completely, and a lot of them left the house. But it did move, and nobody was touching it. But I've only dealt with the Ouija board twice in my life, and the second time was in the house where reportedly, supposedly, was a rumor that there was a body buried in the basement of the house. That's an extra long story. And it was about 15, 20 of us, and it moved. And so I don't deal with those at all. But dealing with the paranormal, I have took a vested interest of trying to understand, not try to solve it, just understand what it is, what goes on. The mystery of life after death is not mine to try to solve, but it's just something that I was interested in. And I've always am, and I still am, been interested in paranormal things. I don't believe it scares me as much as it did when I was a younger person. I believe, and I don't want to sound cliche saying this, but I do believe I am a sensitive where I can pick up on a shift in the atmosphere. I've seen things. I've witnessed things. And even in the house that I live in now, we had a 15-pound silver frame mirror. It was about 3 foot by 2 foot, held onto the wall by legit chains, and it literally flew. It came up, it twisted, and flew towards my wife and broke into a bunch of pieces. And this happened as recent as about 3 months ago. It happened, where the mirror flew off the wall. And I had that mirror since, I must have bought that mirror in 2002. I've always had that mirror. And we hung it up where it was a joke in the house because nobody could use it because it hung it up so high that you could only see the top of your heads. But it was just like, it wasn't a functional mirror. It was like a pride piece. But that mirror flew off the wall and went, I don't even want to say thrown. It wasn't thrown. It was just, it went towards my wife and broke in a couple pieces. For her, luckily, she was wearing some sheepskin slippers and some pants. If not, she would have had some cut up ankles. So I do not take the paranormal as something as a gimmick or a joke or something that's being as something light to be mocked or joked around with. My house is currently positioned between 2 churches and 2 funeral homes within a 2-block radius. There's always somebody dead around my house. And I live not too far away from the cemetery where my oldest child has been buried. So dealing with these things and experiencing these things on a regular basis is something I'm pretty familiar with. My wife and I and my children are all brought up to not only respect it, but not to angst it on, not to mock it, to respect it and keep it to where if there are spirits in our home, they just come and pass it through and, take a look and keep it moving. We do have pictures of things we can't explain. I have a bunch of videos people in my community send me because they know I'm what they call a junior detective. So the paranormal is definitely a wheelhouse that I live in and I believe in and I thrive in it. I have so many experiences that I can't even log it all down because it's just I live an amazing life. It's just like that. I couldn't even put no salt or no pepper on it. It's just, that's how it is. I've seen thousands of shadow people. I had a dog that lived 18 years, and every once in a while you might see, we say, yo, did you see that going in the basement? And I'll swear with my Yorkie poodle, and no, the Yorkie poodle's upstairs. I'm always like, are you kidding me? No. And I'm like, yeah, seriously. I mean, we go through it all the time, and it's a part of life. And people, well, not people, I'm not going to say that, because I don't want to sound preachy. But for myself, I find it more helpful that I understand what's going on, rather than throw judgment or get scared. I mean, if it's not going to be malicious, like the first one that ever touched my face, then, I have no problem with it. It's a planet. We all live on it. And if you have rights to the space I have, feel free. So my experiences are very extensive. And I believe they shape who I am. I believe they shape the way I think and interact with people. And I believe that what we do in this life will carry on into the next. These are things that are happening, and these are things that I claim that I know make me the person that I am, which is very observant. But not only that, just more respectful of life. And I cherish it more than anything.
My paranormal experience started in southern Kansas in '94. And it's on the south end of town. We live in a town called Arkansas City, Kansas. Some people call it Arkansas. But we live in between 2 rivers. And right in the center of Kansas and 3 miles north of the Oklahoma border. Back in '94, my sister and I, and my dad was with us, we went fishing. And we set out trot lines. I got 25, 30 hooks on each one. And we take 2 poles on the end of those and stick them in the sand. And we got the hooks baited with crawfish. And we run them, stay there all night. We run them about every 2 to 3 hours. Once we get that done, we take off the fish that we got, and we'll go back and sit around and wait another 2, 3 hours and run the rest of them. Okay, well, back in '94, we went and did this. Now, the 2 rivers we sit in between on the south side of town. I mean, the town's right there on the edge where we're at. And when we go and bait all these and get it all set up, like I said, we check them, maybe every 2, 3 hours. Well, back in '94, we were sitting there, my sister, my dad. It was about 3:30 in the morning. And we're just sitting there talking, me and my sister. My dad's, he's asleep over on the sandbar. He may have had a little too much to drink, God rest his soul. But we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden, there's lights come over to the right of us. Now, let me kind of set the picture for you. The river runs east and west. We're on the edge of a railroad trestle bridge, and we're on the south side of the river, sitting down below the side of the bridge. We look over to the right, and about 300 yards to our right, these lights come over the top of the trees. Trees are probably 30 foot tall, 40 foot. And this craft comes over the top of the trees, and it's moving no more than maybe 2-3 miles an hour. And it's coming at an angle towards us, coming out of the southeast, and it's moving northwest. So it's kind of going with the river. And we don't say nothing to each other. We're just sitting there in awe. And it just slowly and slowly keeps moving towards us. And we're watching it for a long time. And finally, it gets right in front of us. It ain't 50 foot in front of us. And this craft, I'm telling you, it's got to be 100 feet across. It's got every color that you can think of on the bottom of it. Red, blue, green, yellow, purple, that's flashing. But it's not reflecting off of the water. But it's bright. And it's in front of us 50 foot, and you got this slight hum. There's like a hum in the air, like a buzzing noise, but it's not real loud. But you can tell that this craft had complete control of all of its surroundings. It's just absolutely amazing. I will never forget it. And it's still moving about 2-3 miles an hour. And like I said, it's right in front of us. And like I said, this whole time we never said a word to each other. And the strange thing about it is it kept moving towards town, right downtown, because right after you cross the river there's our town right there. I mean, several houses downtown. And it finally goes over the edges of the trees and goes towards town, and we lose sight of it over the trees. And now how nobody else reported it or saw it, I don't understand. I mean, you could not have missed this thing. But, they say the government may have craft like that and stuff. The government does not have nothing like what I saw. This thing was just, it wasn't of this world. And my sister, we bring it up to her every now and then, and she don't even like to talk about it because I don't know if it's because she don't want to accept what she saw, but she knows what she saw. We both do. And I talk about people sometimes lose track of time or missing time. I don't remember that. All I remember is just watching it go through the whole time. But I don't know if I had lost name time or whatever, but I don't think so. But this craft, it had to be 100 feet across. Like I said, it was maybe 10 foot thick, just a round disc. And it was absolutely amazing. It changed my life. And I know it wasn't of this world, but ever since then, I've been into the paranormal and UFOs and the Sasquatch and Dogman, of course. But yeah, it's something that I'll never forget. And other than that, I had experience with a ghost in Baytown, Texas. Whenever I was a teenager, we lived there. We lived in this apartment. And it was my mom, my stepdad, and my two sisters. And I was the youngest of us. And we lived there in this apartment, and I always had this ghost that was there. He was a man, and I saw him, and he looked, probably in his 30s. And this ghost, he would pick on me, no one else. He'd just pick on me. And what he'd do to me all the time is take his finger, it felt like a finger, all the time now that this happened, he would poke me in my chest several times. Even when I'm laying on the floor on my belly, it'd come up through the floor and like poke me in my chest. And almost every night, the time that we lived there, we had bunk beds. I was on the bottom bunk, and my sister, one was on the top bunk. My other sister had a room to herself. But this spirit, this guy, he would lay his arms up on the top bunk at the end of the bed and lean his head down and just stare at me for hours on end. I'd throw the blankets over my head and pull them back, and he'd still be there. This happened all the time. But finally, we moved out of there and stuff, and it never happened to me again. But it made me a believer in what I've experienced in aliens and spirits, ghosts. Absolutely. That's what I've seen. That's what I swear by.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.